Morning, everybody. I'll just wait a few minutes whilst people are getting logged in. Speak to you in a moment. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second of this year's Subsidence Forum training events. My name is Sarah Dodd. I am the current chair of the Subsidence Forum. This morning, I'm going to be doing a presentation myself, and a colleague of mine will from Catalyst Claims as well. I'll just wait another couple of moments before we get started. Great, it looks like everybody's dialed in that's signed up so far. So before we get going, I will hand over briefly to Patrick Isaacs, who is our head of the Training and Education Special Interest Group. So over to you for a brief hello, Patrick.
Thank you, Sarah. Morning, everyone, and thanks for joining. We've got another 150, 200 people registered today, so it's a great turnout. Firstly, I'll just draw your attention to what's on the screen there. We are obliged to confirm our Competition Act declaration, so you can read that at your leisure. So welcome to the Subsidence Forum Training Day Part 2. For those who joined last week, you might have heard some of this before, but there's some new people today. So I'd just like to quickly explain what we're trying to do. As many of you will know, we're much more used to having sort of more traditional training days where we get to meet up, or demonstration days as we've had in recent years, but obviously that's just not possible in the current climate. But we hope these virtual days are a good substitute. Certainly the webinars have proved very popular and hopefully have introduced the forum to some new members from different disciplines, certainly some people from different age groups, which is very welcome. So we think they're going down well. There's going to be a quick survey at the end of today's session. I'd ask if you could just take a couple of minutes to complete it. It will just help us to decide what to do next year and what topics are of interest. We're running these events for the benefit of the members, so please let us know what you'd like to see. So today's the second of 3 webinars that we're running in October, and we've got a great presentation from Sarah coming right up, and then a video from Catalyst Claims. But if you weren't around last week, you missed our opening session, which featured NHBC and Abby Pinford. NHBC gave us an insight into the subsidence issues they experience, and there was a lively debate on the interaction between trees and new builds and the possible future of foundation design for low-rise structures. And then we had Abby Pinford explaining all about piled raft underpinning, and they went through some case studies which demonstrated how complicated the work can be and why it's best left to the experts. If you did miss it, the webinar was recorded and you can access that via the Subs Forum website or our newly formed YouTube channel. It'll be a good watch, should be available already. If it's not, it will be up in the very near future. The final webinar is next Friday, 9 to 10, and features PRI, that's Property Risk Inspections, telling us all about statutory tree protection. And then to close the event for this year, we have a session from InsurTech Insights about building your brand and social media. Just a quick point, you have to register for each event separately. Just because you're here today doesn't mean you're registered for next week. So, if you haven't done it, please do that before next Friday. If you've got any questions for the presenters, I'm sure there'll be plenty, then please submit these via the Q&A function on Zoom. It's at the bottom of your screen there. We'll collate all those and go through them at the end of both presentations, time permitting. We'll be finishing around 10 a.m. If there's any questions that we don't get to, we'll collate those and provide responses and post them on the Subs Forum website. So on with our first presentation, and I'll pass you back to Sarah, who's going to talk about a new bit of legislation, the Environment Act, and how this is going to affect all of us who deal with subs claims. Sarah.
Thank you, Patrick. Chloe. Excellent. Thank you, Chloe. So the Environment Bill. I'm sure that the Environment Bill is something that you guys will have heard of, but there is quite a bit that's going on in relation to the environment. I think it is the biggest global hot topic, probably the hot topic that actually trumps COVID. In preparing this talk today to make it most useful for you guys, I wanted to give a timeline of where the Environment Bill started and taking us all up to where we are today. But obviously, due to the political element of that, it can be quite tricky. So bear with me if some of the slides feel like they're darting back and forth, but there's quite a bit of explanation that needs to go into them. So that's my little bit of a disclaimer there. But what I also want to say is that we really are in the midst of a climate emergency. I know that it can feel tempting to want to stick to the status quo, but there's absolutely no doubt that the way in which we work and the way in which we all just generally live our lives needs to change, and needs to change now. And we are at the beginning really of a period of significant change, which I would say is going to take us from now up to 2030 and 2050. For those of us who may perhaps be towards the end of our working lives and facing retirement shortly, I think we need to bear in mind that these are changes that we need to make for the next generation, for our children and for our grandchildren. So Chloe, if you can pop into slide number 1. So what is the Environment Bill? So you may have heard of it, you may have heard of people talking about it on the news and whatnot, but there's a parliamentary bill that's due to become law in autumn 2021. It is autumn 2021. It's not law yet. You probably have heard of the forthcoming COP26, the environmental conference that's going ahead in Glasgow at the beginning of November. The plan is for the Environment Bill to be ready for that. But again, a political issue. Will it be ready? Won't it? Who knows? So watch this space. We'll probably hear about it on the news. So what's the purpose of it? The Environment Bill sets out how the UK plans to protect and improve the natural environment to tackle 3 key issues. So those 3 issues are biodiversity loss, climate change, and environmental risks to public health. So first, on the next slide, Chloe, is the issue of biodiversity loss. So biodiversity, why is this such a big issue? So biodiversity is necessary for the stability of the planet. We've got wildlife, which supports the healthy ecosystems that we rely on. We've got biodiverse ecosystems intact. They help us to stay, as humans, physically healthy. We've got biodiversity as an essential part of the solution to climate change, because nature itself can deliver 30% of the emissions reductions that are needed in relation to carbon. So thinking about it in monetary terms, it's good for the economy, and biodiversity is good for our culture, identity, and therefore for our mental well-being. So climate change. So this is something that's, you know, in really common use as an expression. So we need to stop global warming by reducing greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. At the Paris COP21 convention in 2015, nations agreed to aim for a cap at a 1.5 degrees C increase in temperature. And I think the trajectory of things at the moment means that 1.5 degrees is going to be well exceeded. And actually the catastrophic implications of anything above a 1.5 degree increase is quite stark. I think reflecting back on, I would say probably over the last 6 months, and we've seen, we saw fires over in Europe. We've seen a significant amount of flooding. So we're already experiencing those extreme weather events that are a result of climate change and global warming. And then finally, then the environmental risk to public health. This is another thing the Environment Act is going to be talking about. And one of the biggest risks to human health is air pollution. A massive risk in our towns and cities, particularly in London, where I heard an anecdotal comment that actually the amount of air pollution in London well exceeds recommended maximum amounts. And I myself, I live in Newport in South Wales, and I think our air pollution here is quite significant, which is one of the reasons why the speed limits are restricted on the M4 motorway that passes through Newport in order to keep air pollution down. So next slide. Yeah, so what you may be saying, like, what's the relevance to this to subsidence? Well, we all know that a lot of the claims that we deal with are relating to trees causing damage to properties. Traditionally, the solution has been to solve a subsidence problem, a tree root subsidence problem. Well, remove the tree, the property stabilizes, and you don't need to underpin. That option of, you know, tree removal as being the quick go-to, always used solution feels that that's now in conflict with targets to do with biodiversity and targets to do with carbon capture and climate change. In September, so last month, there was a report produced about the global state of trees, and there was a stat that I read in there, which is that I can't remember what the stat is now. It's so impressive, I've even forgotten it. I'll have to refer back to that. But there was a stat which suggested that a significant amount of the terrestrial animals and plants rely on trees for their habitat. So we really have to focus on retaining trees, whether that's in forest environments or in the urban forest. So if we've got a situation where we are facing climate change and we are facing an increase in temperatures, then hotter, drier summers are the ones which cause true subsidence to occur. So if we have an increase in temperatures, that's going to be set to increase the number of subsidence claims that we see occurring in the UK. Not only will it increase the number of subsidence claims occurring in the UK, but we are starting to see a shift north of subsidence claims. So whilst typically they may have been focused down in the southeast, because hotter, drier temperatures are starting to become more common in more northerly areas, then we're seeing subsidence claims moving more north. So one thing we need to do as an industry is to innovate to be able to solve subsidence claims in a way which allows for the retention of trees, basically, and allows for us to be able to hit those biodiversity and climate change targets. Next slide there, Chloe. So I wanted to do a quick timeline for the Environment Bill, how we've got to where we've got. So I'll do a quick whistle-stop tour through this. I could have started with the Industrial Revolution, but that was going back a little bit too far. So starting with the Climate Change Act in 2008, the central element of that is a series of legally binding 5-year carbon budgets for allowable levels of economy-wide greenhouse gas emissions. There is stepping stones then towards our UK target of net carbon zero by 2050. Then in January 2018, DEFRA released a 25-year environment plan and provided targets. The Environmental Bill which is what we're talking about, as one of the key ways in which to deliver that 25-year environment plan. And the whole ethos of the 25-year environment plan was shown that it really is going to take a generation to be able to change the thinking and change the way in which we not only work, but also live our lives, the energy we use, cars we drive, food we eat, etc. In October 2020, the Nature Recovery Network was launched to help deal with those three key challenges: biodiversity loss, climate change, and well-being. And that has set up the Nature Recovery Network Delivery Partnership. Bit of a mouthful there. This is all pretty new. It's all in its infancy. But one thing that the Nature Recovery Network Delivery Partnership strives to do is to gather key stakeholders all involved in the area of biodiversity, climate change, etc., to be able to collaborate across lots of different sectors to come up with some good ideas. Next slide there, Chloe. Then July 2021, the Environment Bill established a new public body called the Office for Environmental Protection. Now, that started off as the Natural Capital Committee, and it has merged into the Office for Environmental Protection. Now, this is brand new. So in July of this year, there was an interim Office of Environmental Protection launched. And actually, I'm not entirely sure whether that interim office has now become the Office for Environmental Protection, but it is brand new. It's in line with the fact that now we've moved out of the EU, we need some internal management of the public sector and making sure that targets are hit. So all climate change legislation, including carbon budgets, are now within the enforcement remit of the Office for Environmental Protection. And it provides a new avenue for people. I've put there to complain about local authorities, but that's probably a little bit off. It's to be able to hold government bodies and the public sector to account in relation to issues of environmental law. And then the key bit, again, into the future, not too far away now, November 2021 is the COP26 Climate Convention. So if you haven't heard of that, that's certainly going to be something we're going to be hearing more and more about as we start moving towards that. Next slide there, Chloe. So the Environment Bill. So the government set out our target here in the UK to reach net carbon zero emissions by 2050. 2050 feels like it's quite far away, but there are some significant interim targets actually between now and 2030 in order to get us to 2050. So the term net zero means achieving a balance between the carbon emitted into the atmosphere and the carbon removed from it. And this bill creates a framework in which strong local government leadership will be enhanced to drive the necessary and once in a lifetime environmental improvements to undo decades of biodiversity loss and improve air quality. Next slide, Chloe. As I've said before, with the Nature Recovery Network, collaboration is key. There's a comment here in the government documentation that I've been reading, which says that the government will fund all new burdens on local authorities and will collaborate with the local authorities, businesses, and other stakeholders to implement measures to deliver a cleaner, greener, and healthier environment. When I popped that in my slide, though, I thought I could imagine that statement that the government will fund all new burdens will probably be of surprise to those of you listening who are in the public sector. But I think it's because this is so new that we are starting to see papers coming out. For example, the paper that came out in the summer about tree management in the UK between 2021 and 2024, and we're starting to see reference to budgets and funding and the way in which this is going to be done. But I think these are things which are going to be rolled out. Next slide there, Chloe. So as I said there, the Nature Recovery Network, the NRN, is a cornerstone of the NRN is to create these partnerships across sectors to share skills, knowledge and resources. In relation to trees, significant things and objectives are increasing woodland cover, achieving the carbon capture by the trees and their growth, the trees helping to manage flood and then also for recreation and mental health. Never more so has mental health and the benefit of trees been really truly realized than in the last couple of years, and how we've all managed with lockdown and the COVID-19 pandemic. The NRN delivery partnership is set up, and it's looking for collaboration from delivery partners to provide advice, time, or expertise. Now, this is something that I, as the chair of the Subsidence Forum, have reached out to the NRN to see if we as a forum can help as one of those key collaborators. So really excited to see how we can get involved with that. Again, it's very much in its infancy, so I've reached out to them, but I know that that's not quite underway just yet. Next slide, Chloe. So the Office for Environmental Protection, again, as I mentioned, that is our independent domestic watchdog, here to manage progress in improving the natural environment in accordance with the 25-year plan. All climate legislation is within the remit of the OEP. They will deal with the management of carbon budgets. Again, they're a new complaint avenue against the public body, holding public bodies accountable on things to do with environmental law. So whether that's air pollution, water pollution, contaminated land, and those other things there listed. Next slide, Chloe. So some of the key issues, I'll quickly mention there's 3 key issues being set out in the environmental bill. We've got 1, restoring and enhancing nature and green spaces. So we know that nature has been in long-term decline, but our ecosystems play a vital role in climate change mitigation by removing and trapping and storing carbon, pollination, flood alleviation, and public health and well-being. It's a mandatory requirement now for biodiversity net gain to be set out in planning conditions. So if you're involved in the world of planning, you will start to see that in those conditions when applications are made. And the Nature Recovery Network, they're allowing for the response to challenges at a local level. Next slide, Chloe. So trees. Trees are a key area in the environmental bill, and they have a section of their own in there. So trees are, well, I mean, they're essential for cleaning and cooling the air. I know that in the summer months, tree canopies can reduce air temperature by up to 8 or 9 degrees C, I think, which is significant. I mean, if you don't have the tree canopies there, then you're looking at a future where perhaps cities will not be possible to live in during the summer because the temperatures will be too hot. Again, reducing flooding and improving physical and mental health. Urban trees in particular playing a key role in building a healthy and economically sustainable community. There's information that shows that if you've got urban trees growing in an area, then it will really encourage its economic viability. And then one thing, probably one of the most key things that's going to affect people in relation to trees and the Environment Bill and Subsidence, so that collaboration of all 3, is the Environmental Bill introducing a duty to consult, which means that if a local authority is given is put on notice saying that a tree is causing damage to a property, then if they want to take action to remove that tree, whether it's for subsidence or for any other reason actually, they need to consult with their local residents to give the public the opportunity to understand why a street tree is being felled and express concerns regarding that. So we're starting to see that. We're starting to see local authorities doing that already, even though the environmental bill isn't out, and it's seeing a lot more public engagement with things such as tree removal. So that's really going to have quite a significant impact. Next one. And then finally is air pollution. So air pollution is the greatest risk, environmental risk to our health. There's increased pressure on the NHS in the aftermath of the COVID pandemic. I was only listening to the radio this morning saying about flu injections coming this year because of the expression of concern of the NHS on everybody's resilience to illness as a result of lockdown. I know there's a significant amount of pressure on respiratory illnesses, so put that together with increased air pollution and it is a significant risk. The Environment Act allows for greater local action on air pollution. And again, the primary function of our trees is to reduce that air pollution. Finally, so So this was a bit of a whistle-stop tour and a bit of a download of how we got to the environmental bill. It's pretty brand new. It's political. It sounds, it's going to be a lot of change, quite expensive change as well. But as I said, this is just a highlight of what the environmental bill is, and I hope you found it all useful. I'll be available for a Q&A session after the Catalyst claims. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. That was excellent, and you kept the time as well. So thanks for that too. Now straight on to our second presentation, and I'd like to be able to introduce the one and only Mr. Duddle from Catalyst Claims, but I think Paul's having a few IT issues this morning. He is around in the ether somewhere. Paul's presentation is actually a video demonstration, so we can play that as normal. If you do have any questions for Paul, please submit them via the Q&A box as normal, and we'll make sure Paul gets them and responds to those questions if they're for him. So I suggest we just press on with Paul's video, press the play button, and as I say, if you've got any questions, stick them on the Q&A box and we'll catch them at the end. So Chloe, if we can start Paul's video, thank you.
Hello, my name is Paul Duddle from Catalyst. We're here today to make a training video on behalf of the Subsidence Forum. The objective of this video is to help, train and support people in this type of investigation. We hope you find this film informative and very much hope you enjoy it. Today's site is a semi-detached property built in the 1970s. The scenario is that there is cracking and downward movement on the front corner. Previous investigations by Catalyst have suggested that there is possibly a drainage issue. A CCTV survey has been requested. The first thing the drainage engineer does on site is to introduce themselves to the customer.
Good morning, it's Terry from Catalyst. Morning. Come to carry out a site investigation at your property.
Good customer communication is really important.
Just to let you know,
It can identify important information about the site, such as who is at the property and if there are any access issues that could arise whilst the team are on site carrying out the investigation. It can also help confirm if the drainage has any historical issues such as blockages.
Yeah, if you can try not to use your toilet, sinks, washing machine.
Okay.
Keep the drains empty for me while I give them a clean, all right?
Yeah, can do.
Okay,
Yeah, cheers.
no problem, thank you, I'll crack on.
The drainage engineer checks instruction paperwork and carries out a risk assessment for the work being undertaken. It's important at this stage to confirm the location of the reported movement on the property and what drains need to be surveyed that are within the zone of influence. Once the risk assessment is completed, the engineer can set up the site in line with the method statement. The drainage survey is targeted to within 3 meters either side of the area of concern. This can be extended depending what's found. For example, if the drains are blocked and backing up, or ongoing issues are noted within the drainage system. The engineer vents the system to allow any possible buildup of gases to escape. He then sets up his barriers and camera equipment in line with the method statement and risk assessments. Guarding the manhole against unsafe access is vital to prevent trips and falls. He is then ready to start his targeted drain investigation. Hi Perry, thanks very much, that was great. I'm going to take this opportunity now to go through the camera box and discuss the different parts of this box and what they do. For this site, we are using a portable remote reel camera system. This has a video camera on the end of a flexible cable called a reel. You'll notice that the engineer has set up the camera so it's facing the drain he's going to survey. You'll also see the reel has a curved memory from being stored on the cage. So if the camera is set up this way, it travels more easily over joints and obstructions when fed into the pipe. There is a reel guide attached to the cage this needs to be kept clean so the reel flows smoothly. Some camera systems have a counter attached to the guide. Others, like this one, have the counter on the centre of the cage. The camera head, as you can see, has lights surrounding the lens. These allow us to see what's being filmed inside the pipe. The lights can be adjusted using controls on the remote reel keyboard to give the best light conditions for the particular pipe and drain being surveyed. The camera lens needs to be wiped clean to give a good, clear picture. Surrounding the camera head is a plastic shield called a skid. Skids come in different sizes and are interchangeable, so the correct skid can be selected for pipes of different diameters. Skids have three main functions. They protect the camera head. They also help the camera travel over joints by using the chamfer at the front and back of the skid. The skid also centres a camera in the drain. We'll go into more detail about the importance of centering the camera a little later. On top of the reel sits the camera box. This usually has a keyboard for coding the footage, which is viewed on a screen. It also has control keys. These have a number of functions, including dimming the lights on the camera head, zeroing the counter, taking still pictures, and filling in the drainage coding sheet. A calibration check should be done at least once a month to make sure the camera counter is accurate and that pipe lengths are being recorded accurately as well. This can be done by simply pulling the reel out 10 meters, then measuring it with a tape measure. If the meterage is out, the camera can be sent away to be recalibrated. It's very important for cameras to be centered in the drain. It means the axis of the camera is in line with the center of the axis of the pipe. This is achieved by using the correct skid size for the pipe. If the camera is too high or too low, the images recorded can be distorted. This can make joints appear displaced when they're not. It can also result in errors in the estimation of water levels in the pipe. This can happen, for instance, if a 100mm skid is being used in a 150mm drain. The offset vocal distance also needs to be considered. This changes depending on the size of the pipe. In basic terms, the offset focal distance means the location you're seeing on the monitor screen is not the actual location of the camera. This can be important if you're marking up for a liner that needs to be finished at a precise point, such as a junction or a rest bend, or a patch liner repair that needs to cover a fault in the pipework. The drainage engineer uses a sewer coding sheet to code the pipework in line with the Water Research Council best practice. These record all the data needed to identify the location and structure of the pipe, also any defects found in it. There are many types of coding sheets on the market these days. However, they all do the same basic thing. They record the type of sewer being surveyed in line with the sewer classification codes, the precise location of where a pipe begins and ends, the lengths of pipes in meters, structural design such as laterals, connections and chambers, and crucially, the condition of the sewer, including all defects. The drainage engineer records all this data by inputting specific codes. There are many ways pipes can become damaged. So what is the drainage engineer looking for when carrying out a CCTV survey? Let's have a look. There are many ways pipes can become damaged. They include vehicle pressure, ground movement, physical damage, for example by service strikes, or different forms of misuse. They can be undermined by leakage or during a one-off blockage. Damage can result from poor installation or inadequate maintenance. Pipes may have degraded through wear and tear. Though we have shown a cause of damage for training purposes, on a subsidence claim, the cause will be reported as subsidence. Usually, a trial hole and borehole has previously been carried out by Catalyst to identify the ground conditions, and this report has identified that the ground has been found to have been influenced by possibly the drainage in the area of concern. We don't have time to go through all the coding defects. However, as part of this training, we'll look at the most commonly used codes. Let's start with joint displacement. Joint displacement is where the pipe is not concentric with the socket of the adjacent pipe. A medium displacement is between 1 and 1.5 times the pipe wall thickness. A large displacement is greater than 1.5 times the pipe wall thickness. An open joint is where adjacent pipes are longitudinally displaced at the joint. A median open joint is 1 to 1.5 times the pipe wall thickness. A large open joint is greater than 1.5 times thickness. Moving on to cracks. A crack is a defect in a pipe that is not visibly open. The pieces have not moved apart. A circumferential crack runs approximately at right angles to the axis of the drain or sewer. A longitudinal crack runs approximately along the axis of the drain or sewer. Multiple cracks are a combination of longitudinal, circumferential cracks that cannot be easily identified and/or individually coded. Spiral cracks are individual cracks that change position as they travel along the pipe. A fracture is a crack that has become visibly open on the pipe wall. Pieces are still in place. Just as the fractures can be circumferential, longitudinal, multiple, or spiral. Root ingress is coded in 3 main ways. Fine root ingress is occasional intrusion of fine roots. Taproot ingress is an individual root thicker than 10 millimeters. Root mass describes roots that have formed a congealed density. Undermined by leakage is where a drain or sewer is leaking and the escaping water washes away the pipe support, causing the drain or sewer to drop. Collapsed pipe is a complete loss of structural integrity of the drain or sewer. Drawing on experience and an initial visual inspection, a drainage engineer can often make a good guess at the structure of the drainage system at a property like this. First impressions here is that a service pipe down the side of the house picks up the surface water and foul water and then empties into the chamber, with the front corner gully feeding into the chamber independently. The only way to be sure, though, is to carry out a thorough CCTV survey. Based on what we can see in the manhole, the drainage in this property is made up of clay pipes. A CCTV investigation is carried out to assess the pipe condition. On this site, we have clay pipes with rigid jointing method of installation. Traditional cement jointing was where a tarred gasket was used to centralise the spigot in the socket and prevent entry of jointing material into the pipe. More modern jointing methods allow for the rubber gasket to allow some flexibility in clay pipe work. The rigid jointing was susceptible to damage from movement. The manhole has 2 backdrop shafts entering it. These are consistent with the drainage engineer's initial assessment of the drainage system. You'll notice one drop shaft appears to have been repaired at some point, because it has a plastic pipe that comes over the top of the benching. Benching, by the way, is the curved cement structure that helps guide sewage into the outfall pipe. The engineer needs to get the camera over the top of the drop shaft to view the upstream pipe. First, though, let's look at what a backdrop manhole is and why it's used. Drainage has to be set up at the correct gradient to function correctly. If the fall is too shallow, the water hasn't got enough force to move the solids in the drain. Again, this can result in a blockage. If the fall is too great, water runs away too fast. This can leave solids behind, increasing the risk of blockages. If the sewer is deeper than the gradient allows, then a drop shaft or a series of drop shafts can be installed to get the pipework to the required depth. It's worth looking at the design of a drop shaft and the issues that can arise as a result. The drop shaft at this property are referred to as backdrop shafts because they run into the back of the manhole. Drop shafts are near vertical pipes. Because of this, they are susceptible to ground movement, resulting in the pipe becoming fractured. These faults are most commonly found just before the point where the pipe drops into the manhole. This is the point of greatest structural stress in the pipe system. The engineer introduces a camera into the running eye of the drop shaft. He first tries to carry out a survey without cleaning the pipe. This is to see if a blockage, especially in the surface water pipe, is causing a leak further up the system. If jetting was carried out first, this detail would be lost. In this case, it's clear from the number of roots and other materials in the pipework that water jetting will be needed. Before we start jetting, let's have a look at the jetting equipment and explain what it does.
Hi, so we're going to take the opportunity to show you the back of the engineer's van and the jetter unit that we use for clearing the drainage if you need to clear the drains or if you need to wash the drains through so we can carry out the CCTV. You can see here this yellow hose. We use this to fill the tank up. You'll see a reservoir tank at the back. So this is usually connected to the outside tap if the customer's got one, and we fill the tank up. Once the tank is full, we can then start the system. This reel here is the jetting hose. You can see here that we've got what we call a leader hose at the front. This is used, you can notice it's a different colour. This basically lets us know that when we're pulling the jetting hose back, that that we've nearly pulled it back out the drain, because you don't want to pull it out while it's under pressure and have a jetting hose flying about everywhere. So you can see why that's blue, a different colour. If I take you across to here, you can see this is a pump itself. So the pump is used here. This is your on-off switch for the pump. So as we engage the pump and pull it across, this then puts the pressure through the actual jetting hose. You notice at the end here of a thread, this thread is used to connect depending what kind of jetting hose nozzle we want to put on, whether we're cleaning, root cutting, desilting, whatever you're wanting to do at the time. So I'll take you across to here. You can see on this side here we have the throttle. So once we've actually got the jetting pump turned on, we'll then turn the throttle up to whatever the engineer wants at the other end to actually clear the system that he's using. Across from the throttle there, you can see now the pressure gauge that we've got. On the side here is your dump valve, so you should be dumping your water in the right place. So make sure that your tank isn't full when you're leaving site, making sure your vehicle isn't overloaded. And most importantly, you've also got your emergency stop switch. So if everything's going wrong, you can hit this switch and that turns the whole system off. Hope that's useful to you.
When the drain needs cleaning, the engineer carries out a risk assessment and sets the site up accordingly. The engineer must choose the correct type of nozzle so jetting is carried out safely and effectively. Line of communication needs to be agreed before jetting starts with the engineers. This is usually a set of standard hand signals. The jetting pump running and PPE on, they are not likely to hear each other. PPE includes waterproof clothing, including a jacket, trousers, boots and gloves, a helmet with a full face visor, as well as ear defenders are essential. When jetting upstream, drainage engineer must keep an eye on what's coming through the chamber and remove any materials that might cause a blockage further downstream. Now the pipework is jetted clean, the engineer can start the camera survey. At this point, this property threw up a bit of a surprise. It was found the pipe connections were actually quite unconventional. Unusually, the two surface water gullies were connected to one service pipe, while the foul system for the toilets and kitchen waste were connected to a separate pipe, with both independently entering the same chamber. Without carrying out a drain survey, this unusual configuration would not have been easily identified. The engineer must now inspect the gully, a task that is often overlooked. But first, what is a gully A gully is a small chamber where water is trapped before it's allowed to flow into the drainage system. What does a gully do? It prevents smells and gases escaping from drains. It stops vermin, and it catches debris before it can enter the sewer system, preventing possible blockages. By their design, gullies are prone to blockages as debris builds up in the trap. For kitchen and utility gullies, this can include fats and grease from kitchen sinks and detergent residue from washing machines and dishwashers. If a trap becomes blocked, wastewater can back up the system and go to ground, creating a subsidence risk. This tells us regular inspection and maintenance of accessible drainage can prevent avoidable blockages that can have serious consequences. There are many types of gullies. This one is a clay gully with a trap at the bottom and a gully head installed on the top. So it's actually two separate pieces. It's important at this stage to check the conditions of the gully. So it's holding the correct water level in the trap, that there are no fractures or breaks in the gully head is not damaged or cracked, the jointing between the trap and the gully head is watertight and not leaking, that the downpipe is introduced into the gully correctly, that the cement flaunching around the gully is in good condition. Also check if the wall looks damp or has plant growth due to water leakage and seepage. In this case, we found that the gully was indeed blocked. By carrying out a water test, the engineer found water was escaping, but not down the pipe. Instead, it was seeping down the sides of the gully pot and into the ground. If left unchecked, this would add to the subsidence risks. An initial solution was to clear the blockage with a plunger. However, further repairs to the gully are likely to be needed. The importance of water testing to check for leaks from sewer pipes is often also overlooked. If soil testing or a visual inspection indicates that the ground around a drain is unusually soft, a low pressure water test should be considered. This is done by inflating an airbag in the section of pipe you want to check. You will need access to insert the airbag downstream and a visual on the water level upstream. Another important task is to check the gully connections. This establishes where the water it takes comes from and who derives the benefit. As we can see, this is a shared gully. It takes water from our customers' gutters and those of their neighbours. Both properties derive benefit from the same drainage system. Therefore, as it's shared, it's a responsibility of the local water company to maintain serviceability. Where excavation work is required, it is important to identify the location of the pipe repair. One way to do this is to use a cat and sonde. The equipment consists of a sonde, which is a radio transmitter, usually situated at the rear of the camera head in modern camera units. It sends a signal to the cat detection device by the drainage engineer. By sending the camera along the pipe, the engineer can locate the sonde above ground and be absolutely sure of its location. On completion, all equipment is removed from site, manhole covers and gully grates replaced, and the customer is informed that the investigation is complete.
Hello, you're right.
Hi.
Just to let you know, we've completed the survey now.
Great. Yeah.
Put everything back to where it was for you.
Okay.
And you should receive a report from the office.
Catalyst supplies a full report. This includes a scope of works and costs for any repairs required. In this case, the survey report identifies the manhole 1 upstream run on the foul system is private and the responsibility of the homeowner. It notes the policyholder has not reported any issues with blockages. The survey report reveals a pipe has the following defects: root ingress, displaced joints and cracks. Remedial work the report recommends is a partial excavation and lining of the run. The survey also notes the structural engineer may feel the damage on this section is outside the zone of influence. The report also identifies issues relating to manhole 1 upstream to rainwater gully 2. It finds a pipe is part of a shared surface water system and therefore the responsibility of the local water company. It reveals a pipe has the following defects: cracks, a defective junction, displaced joints, root ingress, and mass silt. Repair recommendations are to carry out partial excavation and lining of the pipe, with work to be carried out by the local water company. Rainwater Gully 1 was found to be blocked and water discharging to ground in this area. A water test was carried out and the gully failed. This is within the zone of influence and is possibly contributing to the subsidence. You can see how important it is to carry out a thorough drainage investigation. The investigation highlighted the unexpected, with the slightly unorthodox drainage system set up. Without doubt, the main culprit for the subsidence to this property is a shared rainwater gully and pipework on the front corner, which takes a large volume of water from not only the policyholder's roof, but also the neighbours. Catalyst would assist in discussing the issues found with the local water company to get the correct repairs carried out. Private repairs on other sections would, once confirmed by the structural engineer, be carried out by Catalyst. It just leaves me to say thank you for watching. I hope you found this training film informative and helpful. Catalyst hope to see you at a live event in the near future.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks to Catalyst Claims for that really interesting video. We are now on to a few minutes of answering questions that have cropped up as I've done my talk and Paul's video has been playing. So I'm going to, because a couple of those questions are for me, I'm going to hand over to Lauren, who's going to ask me a couple of questions. So it's not me just talking to myself. Lauren?
Thanks, Sarah. So some interesting questions come in during that. So the first one for you, Sarah, is how far north is the rising claims?
Oh, that's a tricky one, because I think, like all good questions, the answer is always it depends. Obviously, it's more than just temperatures that cause tree root subsidence. It also requires a shrinkable soil. So I think those parts of the UK, more northern parts of the UK, where there is soils with shrinkable character, we'll start to see claims arising there. So it could be as far north as, say, areas like Leeds.
Yeah, can I just add to that, Sarah?
Yeah, go on, Patrick. Yeah.
I don't think we've seen a rise in claims this year. If anything, claim numbers have gone down. It's been quite a flat year for subs cases. 2018 and to a lesser extent 2020, we did see some upturns. 2018, a significant upturn. And as you say, it is mainly the clay areas that are affected. So that's London, home counties, East Anglia, that sort of thing. The further north you go, the lesser the numbers, to be honest. There are a few sort of hotspots around Hull, some around Buxton, those sort of areas. But the main rising claims due to clay shrinkage is confined to the south, southeast London sort of areas.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Second one on here for you, Sarah, again. Does government funding mean that government might pay for underpinning in order to retain a tree?
I think questions like that are difficult to answer. I think the government funding that I was referring to there in relation to the Environment Bill is the government said that they will fund additional responsibilities of local authorities in order to comply with the Environment Bill. So I think possibly, so I think that's as far as it would go in terms of the government funding that I was referring to there.
Great, thank you. Just a third one here for you again, Sarah. Stabilising subsidence damaged properties could and should include tree and vegetation removal in the future, but with innovation surrounding suitable offsetting via replanting of more suitable species and in more suitable locations.
Yeah, that's more a statement really, rather than a question, isn't it, Lauren? Yeah. I think we can't get away from the fact that there are going to be, you know, if everybody's aim is to retain trees, which obviously it needs to be for all of our futures, but there are going to be some situations in which tree removal is going to still be required, and the law will support that in the background. So yeah, that's sort of, you'll hear things like carbon credits, biodiversity credits, being able to, I suppose, backfill that loss which has been caused by the tree removal. So things like replanting. But again, in terms of replanting trees, we need to be really careful there. It needs to be replanting the right trees in the right place and with the right care to make sure that they flourish. It can't just be a quick, we'll remove that one and then we'll just plant that one somewhere and it will, it won't thrive and survive. So yeah, they are important issues to be considered.
Okay, thank you for that. Another one on here, does the end bill include timescales regarding the duty of to consult?
That's another good question. I have to admit, I had a quick look at the current version of the bill on my screen whilst the Catalyst claim video was playing then, and there is no reference in there to timescales. I can only surmise that they're likely to be in line with those already in planning law. So I would imagine around sort of 21 days, and in the usual way, notices being put in public places to raise that awareness. But I think more information about that will come.
Okay, thank you. Paul, have I got you on here or not? Are you still having your IT problems? Because I have got a couple of questions for you.
I don't know if you can hear me through.
We can. Yes, exciting.
Wonderful.
So the first question we had for you, Paul, were are some types of pipes more susceptible than others?
Well, pipes come with all different qualities and strengths, to be honest. So it's depending what it's for, what you're using it for. So that it'd be difficult to actually pull out particular makes of pipes and the strengths. And we could probably talk for hours on that, really, and bore people to tears. So they all have different strengths. I think one of the questions I noticed was joint design, which plays a big part in the strengths as well for movement. We did touch on that within the video, regarding the fact that, in this day and age, they're using rubbers and things like that to actually give some flexibility to the jointing.
I think with that first question, Sue was relating to the design of the pipes rather than the makes of pipes. I don't know if you can expand.
Yeah, so you've got all different types of it. Yeah, so what I suppose trying to explain was that there was you've got different makes of clay pipe, you've got plastic pipes, cast pipes, all different types, and they're all used for different kinds of things, such as, cast pipes are very much used for boggy ground because of the strengths and everything else. Plastic pipes are nice and flexible and light to move around, but they all come with the qualities and strengths, really. So obviously, looking at this video, the old system where you had the clay pipes with rigid jointing was, as we say, very susceptible to movement, because you've got what's called ground movement seasonal, which is where the ground, especially clays, gets wet and dries out and therefore moves. And the pipe work in the ground with a rigid joint can't flex the same as pipes these days. So therefore you get a situation where they can get damaged because of that. Does that answer the question, or is there more?
A little bit more just added from Sue. She's just asking, so for new build designers have to be more pipe literate to get the right pipe in the right place?
Absolutely. I mean, this is where the building regs come in and things like that, so that you have to follow building regulations on the type of pipe used, depending on what you're trying to do, what depths you're going through, what ground types you're going through. There's lots of things you need to take into consideration to decide what type of pipe you're going to use.
Okay, That's great. So I hope that's answered your question. If there is any more information that you want post webinar, please just let us know, and we will refer it to Paul.
Lauren, before we hand back to Paul, can I just mention a quick question? I think it's sort of a question statement here from Richard Mace, just because it's probably pretty topical. And
I was just coming on to that one, Sarah.
So Richard asks, as I say, the most commonly when a structure is suffering from subsidence, the preferred method is to remove the offending tree. Realistically, do we think now that we'll see a shift from loss adjusters and insurance companies away from removing a tree to other measures which are likely to be more expensive? Or do we think that they will prefer to plant a number of trees for every tree removed? Further, do you think that carbon emissions for the remedial measure will be compared to the impact of the tree removal, or would this be too short-sighted? I mean, I think summing up that in terms of the number of, the hot topic of those questions is really on point. I think there's absolutely no doubt that whichever side of the fence you're sitting on here, whether you're an insurer of the homeowner, or whether you're a local authority owning the tree, I think we are bound to see some enforced change in terms of how these sorts of claims are dealt with. Because although trees in cities are perhaps relatively small in number when compared with trees in forests, there's no doubt that if we're to hit carbon targets and biodiversity targets, that there needs to at least be a change in mindset here in terms of how these claims perhaps are dealt with into the future. And I certainly know that I've tried to do myself some sort of carbon maths, if you like, and working out what the carbon implication of removing a tree is, with all the carbon that's been sequestered in the tree and all the carbon that tree is able to remove during its life, versus if that tree stays, but a very carbon intensive remediation regime is put in place, such as, I don't know, concrete underpinning. Actually, what is better then? If they're equal in terms of carbon, then does the biodiversity implication of tree removal then come in? These are the sorts of questions which are going to have to be addressed going now into between now and 2050 and hitting our UK net zero target. And so interesting times, but exciting times as well. So I thought that was an important one to try and address from Richard. So Richard, thank you very much for that. So over to you, Patrick, to finish us off.
Sorry, we've run out of time again. Very interesting debates. Fantastic presentation from Sarah. Superb video from Catalyst Claims. A great thank you to all involved with that. You probably can't hear it, but I'm sure there's a massive round of applause sounding out round everyone's home studies at the moment. So thanks very much to both of you. Just a quick reminder for the next webinar next Friday, PRI and InsurTech Insights. If you haven't registered, please do so now. Get your friends and colleagues to do the same. If you want to see Mr. Duddle starring again in his video, you'll be able to do that very shortly. It's all been recorded and will be posted on the Subs Forum website. So hope to see you all next week. Until then, stay safe, everybody. Thank you.